I hardly know anyone who is not at least a little bit interested in the paranormal. Many people have experiences of their own, and maybe you have as well. But maybe you don't dare talk about it openly with other people because you are intimidated by the materialistic mainstream worldview, which leads people to say, these things don't exist, you are not believing that, and there is no scientific proof, and it defies the laws of physics anyway, it can't be. Well, now comes one, Burkhard Heim, and creates new laws of physics which corroborate with these phenomena very well indeed. Hello and welcome to 6 Dimensions in Color. My name is Hannes and I explain to you Burkhard Heim's worldview in understandable language and with clear examples. There is an abundance of excellent scientific studies about paranormal phenomena, about telepathy, about psychokinesis, about spiritual healing. There are even a few cases where it's been documented that psychics could materialize objects, that is, create objects out of thin air, literally. And most of these studies are actually written by scientists of a great reputation who come from the most renowned universities. So we can conclude empirically, these phenomena do exist. Let us name one thing they all have in common. When we say they defy the laws of thermodynamics, what does it mean? That means matter is rearranged in a very unlikely way. That should already sound familiar, because this is exactly what Burkhard Heim assigns as a function, so to say, to the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension deals in probabilities, or their inverse, like the state of organization. The higher a state of organization is, the more unlikely it is in respect to the laws of thermodynamics and of entropy. This is what I already explained with this model, where we have the ilkor, that is the psychic entity, which extends these kind of channels into the physical matrix. And these channels, through these channels, flow perceptions and commands to steer the body, so to say. What these do is nothing else than alter probabilities in the body, that is, of matter. The result is something we call life. These metaphorical channels, these synchroclines, are usually closely linked, very tightly linked to the physical matrix, but what if one or several of those, but let's say one for the start, could detach, or at least partly detach, from the body and form like an open end floating in free six-dimensional space? And what if this open end could then latch itself onto something else? That is, onto another physical object, or onto another living organism. If this kind of attachment is made, then probabilities can still be altered, but on another target, or from another target. That is, commands can flow, or information can flow into the perceiving mind. Little disclaimer for the metaphors here, because I'm talking of channels in which something flows. It's a good image to imagine the thing. Of course, there's no pipe or something in which, I don't know, particles flow or something. It's just an increase. The flow means an increase or decrease of likelihood. So there is a gradient and a flow of likelihood of states of being. But we can very well imagine those as channels, metaphorically speaking. Okay, normally this alien attachment or influence doesn't happen, but there are cases where it happens by chance or circumstance, and of course there are psychics, people who can influence that consciously and use it consciously, at least to a degree. How do they describe this process? It is always something like an intimate connection to the object or the being or the person involved on the other side. Again, let's remember something about the fifth dimension. When we are talking about distances, then we cannot measure distance in dimension x5 in meters or light years, it must be measured, again metaphorically measured, in similarity. Two structures which are similar are very close to each other. Two structures which are identical are completely congruent. And the less they have in common, the farther they are away from each other. And nothing else, when a psychic imagines or concentrates onto its target, he or she does nothing else than create a similarity from its own mind and the extension of his or her own mind onto the stranger or onto the alien object. And that's what creates the closeness, and that's what enables probabilities to take effect. That is, in Burkhard Heim's language, activities to be able to flow between the two. And now activities can take effect in that object. For example, change its atomic structure, change the arrangement of its molecules. There are even cases reported where the subatomic structure was influenced, that is, there was a transmutation of chemical elements, iron changing to silver, for example. So much for the influencing of inanimate matter. What about connections between two living beings? That is, spiritual healing. Well, in that case, of course, the synchrocline extends not to the material plane, but to another object on an immaterial level. That is, for example, another psyche or another cellular organizational level. Burkhard Heim identified 9 different organizational levels of the living matter and of living organisms. And on each of those, the telecore synchrocline could dock and alter, again, probability states. And again, for the person acting, that means that someone has to concentrate on that person, or maybe an animal, and have the will that this person be healed. And then a transfer of, it's perceived as a transfer of energy, mostly, is being taken effect. It sounds quite simple, and it actually is. And it's also not so difficult to do it. Any number of people could pray, for example, for the well-being of one relative who is sick, or even a stranger, and that person's state will improve. There are studies about that. There's one thing I want to talk about, also related to my own work, and that's often overlooked, which is the ethical attitude of the healer. Because we're dealing with something that we have to take a very high responsibility for. Take the responsibility you have for your own body, or feel towards your own body. Suddenly, you're doing something to someone else. The ethical attitude is paramount to the whole thing. The healer must understand that he or she is not the one who can decide of what another person should be like, or what its physical state should be like, ultimately. The healer can be a tool. The healer can wish for the best, but must not want it too much. He must not want to prove a point or demonstrate something to someone else. He must not do this to gain personal importance and appear as a guru. And he must ultimately accept that it is the person's own decision whether or not to be healed or not. And this must not tarnish his inner attitude. A noble ethical attitude of the healer means he or she must have set their affairs in order, must have worked on their flaws of character, and must even accept failure with indifference. Doing this for the wrong reasons and with the wrong attitude will at least severely diminish the quality. That must always be remembered if we talk about these things in this sober manner that the Heim model offers. There's a lot more attached to it, which is not obvious from the language we're using here. Organizational level and entelechy and organization. It actually means ethics and good feelings. Now let's talk about clairvoyance, perceiving information from a distance. The channel, in that case, the channel is not bound to space and time. The channel can dock to an object that can be hundreds or even thousands of miles away. and still information, that is activities, can flow, and the perception can be very accurate. In fact, the object, the target, doesn't even need to be on the same time level. That's what happens when you do a pre- or retrocognition. It can flow freely through six-dimensional space. The end can flow freely through six-dimensional space and also attach to states of the object in question in the past or in a probable future. The key, again, is structural resonance or similarity, entelechal similarity. And that, again, is easier theoretically described than done, because the medium extending its feelers has to be compatible with this target and compatible with the information that he or she receives. And this information must be emotionally bearable. This is something always overlooked when we talk about information. Information is not data that consists of ones and zeros that can be stored on a hard drive. Our brain is not a computer. Our brain works by facts, and it works by images and emotions. And if we perceive something, the whole thing is activated. Knowledge, information is always linked to feelings. If the emotional aspect of an information cannot be processed, the information will be dejected, misunderstood, or it will even disturb the medium. I work as a trainer for the NATHAL method. NATHAL is a training that brings you into contact with higher realms of information, of the highest cosmical energy potential, in fact, and you learn, guided by this potential, how to use these abilities. And the most important thing is neutrality, is desisting to judge by one's own preconceptions, and to enlarge one's emotional capacity and stability. That's the only thing that guarantees that the information you perceive through such clairvoyant or remote viewing things is accurate, or as accurate as possible. There are enough examples of people who have looked onto crime scenes, for example, and were destabilized and really stressed out by the things they are seeing. And I would not want that for anyone to suffer from these abilities, because these are great skills that should be cultivated and used. But as with everything, there is a responsible use, and one that can be harmful to oneself, maybe others as well, but primarily to oneself, and a use that is really constructive and enriching. If you're curious about NATHAL training, how it works, what it can do for you or your organization or your research, have a look on my website, go to my Instagram channel, like and subscribe, and contact me if you have any further questions. Let's come to the conclusion. In Heim theory, any kind of paranormal activity means there is a stream of activities, and there is this kind of metaphorical channel or connection between two entities of whatever kind, actually, can be generalized also beyond the realm of human beings, of course. These activity streams are, in best case, a conscious, voluntary, ethical act, but they can, of course, also happen by lower motivations, by chance, or even simply by instinct in some cases. If you have grasped that any organizational process is governed by a potential that can be ordered into this X5 scale, then we can make another very interesting, actually I think it's a funny statement, because Burkhard Heim said, in the normal life process, you have a non-physical entity, that is a psyche, influencing physical matter, altering its states of probability. He also said, in paranormal activity, you have quite the same thing, only it's not the own physical body, it's something else that is being influenced. But the basic process is exactly the same. We usually don't think about it, that life itself could be so like something paranormal because we are so used to it. But for reason of this similarity, Heim said they are basically the same. And Burkhard Heim forged a term for this. You may know by now that he liked to forge his own terms. And he called the life process, therefore, improperly paranormal. And it's a nerd joke, actually, I think, because he got it in math. There is the proper integral and the improper integral, and I think that's where he got the idea from. So he called the one thing is properly paranormal. That is the unlikely, the unusual things like telekinesis, they are properly paranormal. And life, the thing we are quite used to, which we have every day, that's improperly paranormal. Always keep in mind, when you engage with the paranormal on a personal level, when you're actually training to do these things, basically you don't need any theory around it. You just have to do it. You just have to train it. Also, NATHAL training doesn't use any theory. I don't bore people with Heim theory or any quantum blah blah. It's just exercises you have to perform. Burkhard Heim engaged with these things on a purely intellectual level, and that's very important, as I said in the beginning, to our world today, because it arms us with the knowledge that we can defend with enough self-conscious our living experience, which we know is authentic. Ultimately, that's my main motivation to do this channel, to equip you with the knowledge and the arguments that will ultimately lead to the next scientific revolution in 6 dimensions and in color.